You are watching Travel World Online.
Mr. Suman Billa, Director, Technical Cooperation and Silk Road Development at UNWTO, spoke to twotv on different topics. On world situation today, he said,
some of the countries which have had the first wave of infections are now opening up their economies. Italy has announced that starting June 3rd, they are going to open up their country. Spain, most of the country has now moved into phase 1, and some of them have actually advanced into phase 2. And the Spanish Prime Minister is on record saying that the country will be open for domestic tourism right away, and starting July, they will be opening up for international tourism as well. So one of the things that we are all waiting to see, and that is the global cue that the world is waiting for, is to see as to how these countries fare. If they are able to do well and not have a large damage and open up their economies, I think that is the trajectory that most of the world will follow. But however, if they suffer a big damage and they're actually forced to retrace their steps, I think it will be a big setback for the world. So at this point of time, we're all watching with great interest and we hope for the best. But that's where the situation is.
When asked about the financial support for the trade, he gave his opinion with impunity. He said,
I think as far as India is concerned, I think we need to look at it with a little bit more caution. The UNWTO has compiled a list of all the stimulus packages that all the countries in the world have announced, and that is available on our website. So one of the things that you will notice if you go through that list is that most packages are sector agnostic. There is no country which has come and said that this is a special package for tourism. If at all, tourism has found some mention, at some stage in the footnote or something like that. So that is the first thing that we need to do. So it's typically a general package which is also applying to the tourism sector. The second thing that we notice is that there are countries which have had the first wave of infections. They have been over-optimistic. So several of them have committed to funds thinking that the pandemic may only last for about 2 to 3 months. But now it looks like we're looking at a very long time for the pandemic to ease. So they are also stretched for resources. The second, those countries which have had the infection late, they are tending to hold on to their money and not give enough for industry stimulus packages because they want to keep the war chest ready for fighting the health pandemic. So in terms of scaling up health facilities, etc., I think that is where they're holding on to the money to see if they will have to buy medicines, buy vaccine, and there's a whole lot of things. And this is not just countries, even the World Bank, as late as a couple of weeks ago, is mopping up resources across all practices to shore up the amount of funds they have under the health practice. So that's typically the way the world is going. But if you look at India, I think there are essentially two things that we need to look at, and that's the case for the entire world. The first is liquidity, and the second is unemployment mitigation. And as far as liquidity is concerned, there are a couple of things that you can do. One is to see as to how you can defer, waive statutory taxes, duties, license fees, utility charges. And most of these issues lie within the ambit of the states. And I think many of them are actually, things that can be taken up profitably. For example, your bar license fee. If there has been no business for 6 months, it makes a valid claim for us to go to the states and say that, look, there has been no business, extend my license by 6 months, but without us having to pay you for it. If the hotels are shut, it also makes sense for us to go to the state government, to the electricity boards and say, look, we've consumed very little power during this period. So instead of charging me for the regular block cost that you put, charge me on the actuals consumed. So I think there is a scope for negotiation there. And what the government of India has done is it has announced a 25% reduction in TDS and tax collection at source. So that puts some money into the hands of the businesses, but that is marginal. But I think the big focus here is to actually go to the states and see as to what we can accomplish there. But I think the most important thing is how banks and financial institutions respond to induce liquidity and working capital loans into the system. So if you look at the global example, UK has opened something called the business disruption loans, which means that loans are given and no interest is charged for the first 6 months. Spain, Italy, and Australia have done something called the MSME loan guarantee, in which the government is standing guarantee for 50% of the loan, and they're trying to ease the process. Now, if you look at the Indian scenario, we also have an announcement for a collateral-free loan of 3 lakh crore for MSMEs. And collateral-free essentially brings us more or less in line with a loan guarantee scheme, because your collateral is not being asked at that point of time. And there is a further 20,000 crores which is set apart for debt stressed MSMEs. So I think if you look at the way the Indian package is comparing with the rest of the world, I think it is more or less there. But I think there are some issues that the industry needs to go back to the government and ask and say, moratorium on interest is something that we should ask for, because there are no cash flows. There is no way that you will be able to pay for. So, moratorium is one thing. Two, we need to ask for a lowered interest rate. If you look at Sri Lanka, they are giving loans to MSMEs at 4%. Now, I don't know where they are able to balance their books, but we can say that at least the high rates of interest may be lowered, for this at this point of time. And one of the things that we need to look at is, I don't know if people without existing leverage with banks will be able to access loans. So, that is something that needs to be opened up, so that if I'm a debt-free company, I should not be made to suffer because of that. So I think it should be made available to everybody else. And the cap of 100 crores needs to be increased, so that bigger companies also have a little bit of leverage. So I think these are some things that we need to, sort of take up with the government. Now, if you look at the second part of it, which is unemployment mitigation, some countries like UK and France have done what is called furloughing for technical unemployment. That is, if some employees are working for me, I say that I want to retain them, I want to keep them as my bench strength, but at this point of time, I am unable to pay them their salaries. And the government has said, if you prove that they have been working with you for some time, then we will pay 80% of the salaries into their accounts directly, assuming that, at some point when it turns around, you will take them back. Now, this entire calculation has been based on the fact that it's going to last for 3 months outermost. Now, both the countries are having a big problem, because, there are news reports even today saying where they're asking the employers to contribute at least 30% starting from June, which is the 4th month. Because it's a large flow that is going out of the government's kitty, and there is really no way to sort of keep paying that on a continued basis. So I think that is a challenge that they are having. The US model is a little bit more interesting. They have said that every hotel can take a working capital loan at 250% of its total employment cost. So if I pay $100,000 as salaries to my employees, I can take a working capital loan of $250,000, which is on a normal banking rate. But if I get all my employees back by 30th of June, I have to prove that all my employees are back on my rolls. Then there is a forgiveness clause, which means that I do not have to pay back that loan. Now, that is something that I think for India, within the banking system we have, it might be difficult for us to do. And even the furloughing option of the government actually paying salaries, and considering the fact that we have the mass migration of labor and whole lot of things, I don't think our means really sort of support us to furlough. But one of the things that Spain is doing is that 50% of the social security payments, which are made by the employer for the employee, is there is a 50% bonus that the government is giving. So that is, if you pay 100 rupees as social security for employee A, the value of that is taken as 150%. So if you look at the Indian system, they have also, there is an EPF contribution which the government is making for the employees. But of course, it presumes that the employees are going to be working and going to be paid. So I think there is no easy way out as far as employment is concerned, because we must also understand that the government has limitations. Just like the industry is very stressed, the government is equally stressed. Your revenues are not coming in, and there are limits to how much deficit financing that you can do. And the whole world is approaching institutional financing multilaterally, like World Bank and IMF and others, but there is only so much money for them to lend as well. So I think there is a problem there. So we need to be a little bit more circumspect.
Mr. Billa, what is the way out?
So to my mind, I think the best outcome that we can look at is if we can get a liberal working capital loan, and within that, if we are able to carve out some salary for some carve out for salaries for key personnel, I think that will be useful. And when I say salaries for key personnel, I'm not saying that you need to pay the full salary. I'm saying that you need to define, if you have 20 people, at least define 10 people as your key personnel whom you need to keep to run the enterprise going forward. And you can enter into all kinds of discussions, negotiations with them in terms of, I will pay you 60% of the salary now, 40% 3 months later, 6 months later. These are all things that have been worked and done. In fact, when we had floods in Kerala, the tourism industry had widely resorted to these things because capital just dried up, and people said, continue to work, I will pay you 60% of the salary now and the rest of it 3 months later, 4 months later. So various leverages are available within the employer and the employee. So to my mind, I don't think the tourism industry now should be despondent. This is not the time for despondency. I think we should take a very hard look at the general package that there is, see how it is fitting the tourism sector, and if there are some places where it is pinching, we need to go back to the government and say, look, this is not working for us. We are not able to access loans, or the interest rate is too high, or we need a moratorium. These are all issues. These are all fair arguments that you need to go back to the government with. So I don't think we should look at it as if this is the last package that there is, or this is the last intervention by the government. This is an ongoing conversation, and this we can develop as we go along. So I would advise all my industry colleagues to stay strong, take a look at the package, and then go back to the government to see if something is not working out. Let us see what we can change.
When twotv asked Mr. Billa regarding interest-free loan for a year, he said,
look, it will, from a banking perspective, because I don't think the government will be able to subsidize loans considering the situation that it is in. But we can certainly ask for subvention of interest. We cannot ask for a interest-free loan. I think you should ask for subvention of interest, which is a lower rate of interest. 2, you need to ask for a moratorium, which means that because there are no cash flows now, you will not be able to pay it back. I think you need to say that you charge me telescopically, at the end of year 1, and then, as it keeps going forward. So those are some things that we need to do, because when we negotiate, we also need to understand the difficulty that the other party has.
Perfect.
You are watching Travel World Online.